Folks, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop here this Monday, May 12th. Great to have all of our students and trial members alike inside our live trading room. First, we'll give a quick shout out to John, Bill, Bell, Kumar, Roberto. Got Roberto's email we'll get to in just a bit. Fred, Anna, Marcella, Mike, Lawrence, Wiz. Got Margaret, if I didn't shout her out just before. Jeff, and all of us otherwise. But a quick shout out here to all of our trial members joining us here this morning. Got Dawn. I saw Clarence just before. Mike P, Julie, got a few more joining us down at the bottom here. Beth, John R, Michael T, Kim T. Great to have a lot of members just testing our room out here for this week. My name is Josh Levitan. I'm Fausto's senior instructor over at Cyber Trading University. Small Business Monday here, repping the fine folks at my coffee shop over at Bel Air. So great to have all of us, though, here otherwise on social media, at least seeing my ugly mug. Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, including TikTok. Bottom down below on the lower left at Cyber Trading U is our social media handle right there, especially on YouTube. That's where we post most of our free content, free education there. But I'll tell you though, here in Traders Talk, as well as specifically inside our live trading room each and every day, this is where we have the chance to break down the whys to a lot of these moves that we've called out earlier. We just had our morning watch list put out from 9 o'clock in the morning, a bunch of high flying stocks, some Bitcoin related at least here. So, we'll get to Bitcoin in just a moment. I had a couple of emails and chats that get sent to me over the weekend heading into today asking about Bitcoin. What is next for Bitcoin? Are we going to see another big drop? Is this the beginning of the good bull market? We'll get to that in just a bit. My short answer right now is we've been in the bull market, right? So there's a lot more ahead, but we have been in the bull market, right? But with that, let's get right on ahead to this because we had asked inside our live trading room just before I started this workshop. I was asking Anna and Fred and Michael and Jeff and Roberto, Kumar, all of us here, if you could take yourself back to this morning at 9 o'clock Eastern when Fausto was doing the morning watch list, what stock from our list was the one that caught your interest the most? So if you're on social media here, this right here is the morning watch list that Fausto put out earlier today. A bunch of different stocks on there. And of course, a couple of name brand ones, Tesla, the NVIDIA trade, IBIT there. But along with that, a bunch of familiar names. We've done exceptionally well on Pony. We've done exceptionally well recently on Archer, Rigetti, the quantum stock. So I'd asked all of our students, if you can go back to 9 o'clock this morning, put yourself in those shoes and ask, what stock was I most interested in? Because that's obviously a lot different compared to what could be after the market opens up. We can't forecast it perfectly. There's going to be stocks that are on this list that will just die off pretty quickly, and we learn to move on from those within the first 5 minutes. There may be stocks that pop up outside of this list, but this is where we want to keep disciplined and focused at first. Fausto has been doing this show for about 35 plus years. So, there's a reason he's putting these stocks on our list and not others. So a bunch of us wrote different answers. Kumar, Roberto, John wrote the FRGT trade. Now, I'm going to get to that actually in just a bit. We'll have a chance to go over, what happens when a stock fails to make that higher high. Anna wrote the Rigetti trade, quantum stock, and Pony as well. Marcella agrees. She liked the Pony stock as well as Bill from earlier. So let's start off on those. Obviously, the other one, the shiny object in the room, the one I was thankful not a lot of us even wrote or answered me just before, was this KDLA. This was the shiny object in the room from like 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was here, 7 o'clock, I should say. But to see a stock go from 4 up to like $32 before the market even opens, that's where you're expecting more profit taking for this to not make that same type of run afterwards. I mean, every roller coaster has a top, right? So you just don't want to be on the top of the roller coaster looking down, because when you are, it's much tougher to get out of. So not really many of us wrote this one, but let's get to Pony, because hey, for as much as Pony moved up the last week and a half, 2 weeks, you figure you're going to start to see a lot more profit taking at some point, especially if you focus on the weekly candles aside from the daily ones. So we closed out last week extremely well, very strong. Big body, closed fairly close to the high here. So it's possible we keep going up, but what happens when we don't, right? It's already moved up too much to begin with. It's still up 6.6% technically from Friday's closing price, but did this make a great move for us? I mean, if you could scalp it, perhaps. If you're looking for more, you didn't get it. So let's go over this trade to begin. What to look for in a stock like Pony. We know it didn't continue, but if you were looking for an entry on this stock, where could you have gotten it? That's what we like to do here in Traders Talk, because the more that we find the similar reasons as to why a stock is making a bounce or breaking above resistance, it becomes a lot easier in the next trade, the next day, the next week. Whenever you join us here inside this live trading room, the more that you see the same patterns work out, at least more often than not they do, then you should have the confidence to react that way the next trade, the next day. So right away, let's just show our new trial members here kind of the process that we go through when it comes to analyzing these moves. Again, we know it kind of shook around a bit, but for a stock like Pony, it's not so cheap anymore, guys, right? So what sets of levels should we feel most comfortable using? What sets of prices should we more often find these iceberg orders at? What do we got? Bill or maybe Lawrence or Kathleen, Alicia here. Where do we often see these big iceberg orders on a not so inexpensive stock now? Bill says the dollar levels as well as the $5 levels. And Kerry agrees pretty much, right? Yeah, absolutely. Every $1, you should find some sort of iceberg. $18, $19, $20. Now, 20 you could even say is, a $10 level, incremental, $10, $20, $30. It's a decade, right? So you want to focus on every $1 to start. But since we're right near this 20 level, let's emphasize that a lot more as big resistance heading into the open today. It looks like it held pretty well early in the pre-market hours at like 4 in the morning, right? So I don't even think it broke above it. It may have just hit there perfectly and then pulled back. You haven't seen that stock hit this price afterwards, though. So this is the first and only test of $20 here this morning before the market opens up. So there's a lot of time in between level testing here. I would either wait to see it try and go through support and build support. Maybe it just tanks right away and it becomes a good short if you're able to get the shares. This is why we don't want to short stocks necessarily that are going up and up and up and up, because this hasn't really made a great down move yet, as we can kind of see in hindsight. But it's just to mention that we'll focus on these whole number levels first, and we definitely need to see 20 prove itself, because it only touched it here once, and that was it. Um, we could go back on the historical chart perhaps just to go through like last week's move, but it's still up 6% from Friday. So let's at least show what book map looked like here, the heat map program that we often use. All right, so where do we have our big resistance here? I want all of us on social media as well to answer this for me, much like Kerry, Bill, Lynn, and Randy, Kathleen, Anastasia. Where do you see resistance here on this heat map? Give me a price, give me a line, something that is an orange or red line perhaps on the screen. It's almost a unanimous decision here, right? $21. That's your largest order out there. It shows on this column, COB, about 74,000 shares. I mean, it's a beat red line. Shows just going across the page since 7 in the morning up until the opening bell, right? And then otherwise a little bit above it, 21.20. So we'd give respect to 21 anyway as a key level, dollar level, but then otherwise this will complement it. That's all. Now, next question though, and let's see if we can make use of it. All right. So around what price do we see a big spike of volume here? If you look on the far right side, this column now, where it says CVP, look down below, what price sticks out, what area sticks out as big volume on that histogram. Keep the tongue untied. We got to get my caffeine fix in. Bill and Randy, Tex, got Debbie, Carrie all saying right around this 1940-ish. We'll just kind of say 1940, 1935 from consolidation. There's a lot of volume built up from that consolidation, at least heading into the open. So at least I'll just draw a line here in 1937 or something like that. Make that white just to denote the CVP level there. All right, market opens up. Ding, ding, ding. We wait the first 3 to 5 minutes, right? So this ends up blowing right over 20 within the first candle, the first couple candles here. That looks impressive, and the run up really is. It blows through it, runs up about $1.29 after. So let me ask all of us here right away, because this is what I would believe right away myself if I'm watching this move. When this breaks above resistance and flies, this is a real run, not just a little nip of the level. So when it does pull back, what would we want to see resistance become? What are we looking to see resistance flip into here at 20 bucks then? Support, right? Now, this does what we would want it to do at first, actually. It breaks into it, goes under, over. And if you're looking at that for an entry, you have that in your head. We teach this all throughout our classes, our coaching program. We try and go through it quick here in Traders Talk, but you get your under and over, clean entry. But this is where, once again, what's the next step in the process? Well, when I jump into a trade, when a stock breaks through a big level and I'm taking the trade, I'm jumping in. What am I expecting shortly after? Michael, Marcella, Lynn and Randy, certainly, Sam, Wayne. Just simply put, right? Simply put, a big move. That's what I'm expecting. I hope it's a big move up, right? Well, what if it's not a big move up? I guarantee you it's going to be a big move. That's the key. So we're simply looking for a big move off of this level shortly after. And the longer we don't, then it's more prone to fail. So I'm just pointing out to you, the second this breaks back below 20, just get the hell out. Take your money and run, take a small loss, go break even once you see it's failing to make that better run. When it drags back down here, that's where oftentimes I just pull the plug manually. I'll just hit the close button, just get out, because I know it's either more likely to sling back up, get closer to where we had resistance at 21, 21.20, or not. It's a yes or no. So if it just ends up coming back down here, I'm expecting support to break. Then it comes back down. Now, funny enough, look what actually became good support. Broke below it a little bit, actually wicked as low as almost 19, but I'll say the CVP area, this level, it became good support. This could have been a good little entry here for you to see support build back up above the CVP level, the price that all of us wrote here in the chat, and then from there, move back up, right? Did you get the higher high? Would you have gotten that next leg up higher? Obviously not. It ended up making another lower high and just shook around for a while. But this is where I tell you all the time, especially in the coaching program on the side, where you come to me talking about stops, where you come to me talking about targets, let's focus on the entry first. That's literally the first thing that I'll look at when I review trade. I'm going to get to a couple trade journal reviews in just a moment. I want to give a shout out to my student, Roberto. He sent me this with the intent of me sharing it for Traders Talk for all of us. So I want to thank him for allowing me to do that. So at least we'll get to some journal review in just a bit. But that's where I just say, hey, like this all begins with the entry. So if you start off at 20 here looking for support, I wouldn't blame you because it made such a big breakout at first. But if it's not going to play nice, then you better take your stop real quick or just go break even. I'm not in it to make tiny money here. I'm not like pissed off about losing the chance to make 33 cents. When this popped up $1.30 here, I'm looking for a much better move than just a little penny here. So you either go break even or you just take a small loss and accept it. Now, of course, it makes that better build off the lower level next. So there could have been room to jump back in, and that would have made you much better, money. Go from like 1935, 1940-ish up to around 20, even if it's just a little over 20 here shaken down. That's still a decent profit, much better move than this. So as far as like why Pony didn't make the better move, it's because it moved up too much from last week and the week before. We've been on top of this trade for a long time now. So for students like Bill, who's been crushing it on this stock left and right, up and down, it's not a surprise to him, right? Because he's been milking it for as much as he could on the long. And it's not a surprise now with it up like what, 500% from the other week. Hey, some stocks make that move in one day. Some stocks make that move in 1 week or a couple weeks here. Unfortunately, not every stock makes that move at all. So we have to learn when to, give up on the trade. Even here now, is it possible it could try and make an afternoon move for us? To me, it would have to prove itself. I'm not expecting it to. Even if you did well on it now at this point, it's trading a lot slower, a lot more with lower highs compared to the last few days. So you should know, like, hey, if it's not going to make that better move up soon enough, it's best to move on. And I don't mind waiting to see it try and make a push back up to 20 because, hey, the more times it ends up breaking over 20, we're seeing the buyers try and squeeze the sellers out again. So I'd almost rather wait to see it get back over 20 and to see it flip 20 properly into support before I think about the next leg. Because just from here, it seems like lower highs, pulling back down to 19, maybe breaking below that, game over. So, it'll need to prove itself to me pretty much going forward. But the same would be said for a lot of these from last week. Remember Asset, ASST? So, this stock eventually came crashing back down. It was from Friday last week, it was. So if that's not surprising to you on Asset, why would it be surprising to you on Pony then? It's the same type of deal. Both made an extremely large move in an extremely short amount of time. I'm always pessimistic when a stock is up that much. But as much as I am pessimistic about continuation, I still want to give respect to the levels. So going back to like Pony, hey, I'm not jumpy towards it here just yet because it's still making lower highs. I'd rather see the better level play out off of 20 and then see that flip into support before I think about jumping back in. Now, that was the Pony trade. Let's get to another one that was much more of a loser. This one you could have had some room to jump in on. Could have had some room to jump in off this 1935-ish. Not even once, actually twice. You always hear me say the first test is the best test. So this would have been like the more premier entry. I guess you could have tried it a second time, but once it keeps making those lower highs, you kind of move on. Now, the FRGT trade, though, this was a lot uglier, right? And I was looking for this to make a better move. It did make a great move, but it failed to play nicer after. So, one of my students, Bill, just wrote to me earlier in the morning asking, if I was interested in anything heading into the open for the most part, right? And I said I was looking for FRGT as long as it stays over $1.75. Bill, if you don't mind here, I'm going to share a little snippet because just I like to show the fact that, hey, students should feel more than comfortable to message us in the mornings, especially myself. So Bill, a Diamond student of ours, hey, he was on the TSLL, HIMS, he's been crushing it on. And I just told him, I said, I like the FRGT trade if it stays over 175, right? So trading is conditional. If the stock does what we're looking for it to do, there's a ball game to play. If the stock doesn't do what we need it to do, then we don't want to be holding on any longer than we should. So you can still see my line here. You can see what happened afterwards, of course. This was a shaky move in pre-market, and it wasn't surprising, at least to begin. Like all of this here to start, really not that surprising when you look at the daily chart. This thing is a hot mess. It's been dropping for a long time, so that's not a good swing trade for sure, let alone when it's been a good day trade, it's come right back down from like a week or two ago. Now, whatever news came out this morning, perhaps we could see a green day on it here, maybe. Perhaps there could be a gap fill. Perhaps it could try and flip two into a support and move up higher from there. All of those things are in line. All of those things are possible and realistic. It's not too far-fetched. It's not like this is up 1,000% in one day or however much that last one was. But, at least here, from the last time that it teased us, I remember this, and I was looking at right around 180 right here, 181-ish, 180. And then more so recently, the highs from last week, these two candles, which is right around 175. So more or less, I was looking for that area to eventually flip into support. I said I like FRGT if it stays over 175, right? If. Hey, it tried at least earlier here, failed to get the job done. But by the time the market opened up, at least, it had a strong pop and a breakout. This was our moment right here at 9:40, 9:45 in the morning. This really was our moment to take this trade. Great entry here. I was trading it from pre-market. I ended up taking half out at 177. I was in from like a lower price because I had to average down. I got out of my trade pretty much right when the market opened up. But for anyone else here after the open, this is your move. This is your opportunity because it wasn't really holding well as support throughout the pre-market hours. Like maybe here it was as resistance. Maybe it was a little bit here as resistance at first, but it wasn't getting the job done as support. So if you're looking for higher highs, it's got to play nice. And it started to, really started to. Came into it, perfect bounce. But this is where it was like real time. Like basically I noticed this in the moment and it was maybe just a few minutes after that, it came crashing down. So what was it? Yeah, it was the gap fill. It was basically the perfect gap fill where it broke a little over it. It was the closing price from this candle here from May 2nd, 208. So likely you had a closing bell print at that price at 208. Hey, if you were able to identify that before the market opened up, then you're able to react to that more in the moment. I didn't really focus as much on that one price from pre-market hours, at least after the market opened up. I was looking at just pre-market resistance around here, but I wasn't aligning it with that closing print. I didn't until pretty much right when it was beginning to peak here at this point. It was like spiking up to it. And I said, oh, shoot, wow, that's actually a big historical level from a week or two ago. If this wants to keep pushing up, it needs to flip this into support. And if it's not going to, then there's a good chance for this to come down very fast. I made that like point blank known on the microphone minutes before this even happened. So, do I mind getting shaken out? A little bit in the moment because it would have been a great trade off of that 180, good for about 30 cents. But in the grand scheme, there was a lot more ball left to play in accordance to reversal time. It was like 9:45, 9:47 in the morning here. When you're thinking reversal time is around 10:15, let alone maybe 10:30 Eastern, that is, then I'm thinking that, hey, the more times it stabs into this level here, there's a good chance it breaks out, and then you're looking for the flip. It just held this really well. It didn't give it any time to lay over it as support. It came back under it fast. I thought there could have been one more peck back above. I was, pretty confident on the run. Well, it's not a matter of being overconfident, but it's just a matter of knowing what happens when you don't get your move. So it came screaming back down. I got stopped out right at 175 or 176 on it. I took a tiny loss. I was in from 81, but better that than this, right? Better that than catastrophe, disaster. This did not do what we needed it to do or wanted it to do, whatever you want to say, especially with that reversal time at 10:30. More stocks than not tend to make that drop off in momentum or flat out reversal around 10:15, 10:30 in the morning. So I didn't literally have my feet kicked back on my desk here as I was in this trade, but I was thinking things were going to be pretty good. um, hey, better small loss than big loss of the grand scheme of it all. So the best thing to do in a situation like that, it's easy to say in the moment, but it's true. We're all human beings that carry emotion. So when that happens to you and you get frustrated, you better drop the frustration, drop the emotion. Basically, not to sound so blunt and mean like this, I don't mean to sound like a meanie, but I say it to myself. I had to do this myself before other trades move without me. I need to suck it up. Simple as that. I got to suck it up and say, shit, that didn't make the move I was expecting it to make. All right. Well, it immediately got halted right away after. So I felt good with it not being in that halt, but you got to learn to move on. You got to say, all right, well, what other stocks are moving out there? How is Pony doing? Is there an entry on that trade? Are there other stocks on the list that aren't as crazy, maybe, that do have good spreads still that might make a move? What's Archer up to? What's Rigetti up to? Like all of those at least. Uh, but the more that you're kind of in that trade or thinking about it, then you're either stuck in it or you're stuck watching it do nothing for a long time. And that's where we just instantly learn to move on to something else. Rob A asking why 175. Oh, okay, that was from earlier. Yep, no problem there, Rob. Great question, at least. And it was from the daily chart, the long-term chart. Remember, trading revolves around ifs. Let's go back, even not to go off course, but let's go back to the stock market. If Trump didn't say everything he had said in the last couple of weeks, if there weren't agreements made, then I'm sure we wouldn't have gotten as good of a squeeze up over the last 1 to 2 to 3 weeks, right? If there is more escalation geopolitically with all these countries and stuff, Ukraine and Russia, India and Pakistan now, right? If those escalate, then the market's going to likely drop off. But it's all around if, right? The two most powerful words when it comes to trading are if and the word then. So if the stock does hold over 175, the FRGT trade that was at least, then we have a ball game to play. If it does not, game over. That's it. I'm going to get to Roberto's email in just a bit. He just asked here in the chat, when a stock is halted on the way down, most times it never comes back up again. Correct. Just give you a shoot from the hip number, a ballpark estimate, but like a solid 99% of the time, they don't come back. If you want to say 95 instead of 99, be my guest. But much, 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 much more often than not, they do not come back. There was like one earlier today that tried to, and it never did. It was the grip trade, GRYP. Got halted down here and it made a squeeze. But after that, look what happened, right? I mean, I can go over this at least for a moment because this was also on our morning watch list. Pretty cheap stock. It actually had good spread, good order book right now. I know this is real time right now, folks, but little practice, little drill here quick for all of our students and members right now. Where is there an iceberg on my screen right now? Is there an iceberg and where? I guess I spoiled the first part of that question. There is an iceberg. Where is there an iceberg order on this screen on the far right side of my screen in blue and red? Wiz and Marcella, Anastasia, Lynn and Randy, Leda, Carrie, all saying 170, right? 270,000 shares. It's being tested right now as we speak. That's real time. That's real time currently. But hey, for this stock that's moving in the pre-market hours, we need to do the same exact practice. We need to go through where those big iceberg orders are, at least before the opening bell. So whatever news came out with this stock, I think it's to do with Trump's or Eric Trump's company, Hut Mining, Hut 8. It's a Bitcoin mining stock. So again, we'll get to the Bitcoin stuff in just a bit. But for a cheaper stock like this, less expensive stock like this, what common set of price levels should we often expect to see support resistance at? What do we got, folks? Just generally speaking, for a cheaper stock like this, where often do we see support resistance levels? 50-cent levels and whole numbers, right? So $2 right there. You can go with like 150 down below. Looks like that was like basically holding perfectly as support right there, we'll say. And then 250 up top. So guess what? I mean, it was holding pretty well over 150. It broke over this at 2 and actually flipped it nice into support before the opening bell. And then it tried to make a move up to 250. That's simple enough to us, right? So if you were looking at this trade going into the market open, this is the first thing that you should be doing instantly before going to bookmap, even before even like actually confirming. Just plot them anyway, right? Now let's actually look at bookmap. So the question I'll ask is, where did we have icebergs on bookmap going into the market open? What prices did we have? Notice past tense. So where did we have a line get either removed or broken through? Either or. Where do we see a longer line get either removed, it disappears, or it gets broken over? And remember, focus on the ones that are the darkest yellow, darkest orange, darkest red, if there are any. Great to see John joining us on YouTube today. There you go. Normally inside our live trading room there, John. Great to have you here on YouTube. All right, so a lot of us answering pretty much right here. It's kind of tough to give the exact numbers. So if you had answered 180, I'm giving you credit there. 185, I guess the real number is. Right at this orange line, it is a 230 plus thousand share sell order out there. Yeah, that's an iceberg to me. So that's resistance, number one. Now the other one, what would be the other line that would be more notable, more orangish perhaps? Where do we see it? Debbie wrote it and Kumar wrote it before her. And, there we go. A few more of us as well saying right at $2, or I'm sorry, right at $3, I should say. Get my dyslexia kicking in right now. $3. You see this orange line disappear, right? So it's out there for a long time throughout the morning, but suddenly just disappears. I'd like to ask why, right? We don't have the answer to that question, why. But for as long as that order is out there, since 6:39 in the morning up until 8:54, I'd like to think that this is still going to be a relevant level, a huge resistance to work with, even if it disappears. Even if it disappears. Now, if these lines are out here like this, they're only out there for like a couple of minutes, as long as a cup of coffee. Don't even think about, worrying about that. Don't give respect to that. Give respect to the darker orange red that get broken over like this. And maybe you could say this area perhaps too, maybe, but this looks more easy on the eyes, 185. And then this one here, for as long as it was out there, a few hours, couple hours, gets pulled. So I still want to show respect to this. I feel like it was out there for a reason. Now, the only price here I didn't really have a line at just yet on my chart was that 185, right? 185. Definitely draw a line there. And it broke over it, right? So if I were to color this line right here based on like time and sales and based on what we would normally see on the tape when a stock is, moving up and breaking over a level, what color should we give this here? What are we giving this color here at 185, this line? The stock is moving up, 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 up. Margaret, Carrie, Mike saying green right there. Yep. And what do we nickname green as again, folks? What's the nickname that we give it? Buyers, right? Buying pressure, buyers. Well, it looks like it sure blasted way over this and flew. Broke over resistance, you could say, and the buyers started to win the battle. What would we want to see resistance initially become? What are we looking for resistance to initially become? Support. So I feel really good about that here. Maybe it could happen at $2 though. Obviously, it started to here, right? So this would probably be the better level in my opinion going into the open. But if something larger pops up at 2, this shows pretty well on the CVP column as well. It's not like there's one massive spike, like 2 times the size compared to the others. But you could see the 185, and hey, you could even more so a little bit see the 2. So we do want to give respect to that. Debbie asking, please explain when the ball volume is larger than the COB. Really good question there, Debbie. As Josh the instructor right now, my first thing in this answer will be I'll have you go through the phase 1 lesson 12 class. That's my intro class on Bookmap on level 4. It's a full 60-minute class there. And then I'll tell you throughout the phase 2 course, it's probably lessons 10 or 9, 10, 11, 12. The latter end of the phase 2 course. That's where I talk a lot more about the volume side of things, and I include Bookmap further. To give you the quick answer here, of course, getting to the point, market orders, between market orders as well as dark pools. So that's basically why you'll see larger prints compared to what's out here on this book. Now, also, part of the answer is this shows 2 of the main ECNs out there on Bookmap, the NASDAQ, as well as another one called the EDGX, the EDGX. So what if, on occasion it could happen, what if there's a bunch more orders being routed through the New York Stock Exchange or the ARCA book, it's called? It wouldn't show on Bookmap as far as the line, since it's through a different data book, but you'll see the dot. You'll see the dot pop up. Like for here, like you could see, and actually this is 2 dots, not just one that makes it up. But point being is that you could see these dots pop up at any point of the day. And if it's not based off of an orange or red line, then it's likely from market or just a dark pool print. So I'll take more time to go over that in class, but also I know that you have a bunch of coaching we'll have the chance to work in coming up even this week, I believe. Now we have the 185, we have the 2. You could even see on CVP, not only like this isn't a big spike, but look at the difference between the green and the red, right? Seems like there's a lot more green than there is red. You could say the same here at the 85 price. So what happens after the market opens up? That's what we want to answer. That's what we're basically going to reveal, show. Like it's easy to say it's up 225% right now, but it's not so easy to go through this and ask, well, where were the best levels? Where could we have jumped in on this trade? I mean, we had all the time here in pre-market to prep this up, right? From 8:30 in the morning going into 9:30. We had the chance to go through Bookmap, plot these levels here. Now, how could strategy come into hand here now? Well, market opened up, ding, ding, ding. We wait the first 3 to 5 minutes irregardless. Doesn't matter the stock, doesn't matter the day of the week of the month. We are waiting the first 3 to 5 minutes. So I do believe this got halted right away in the first, minute. It reopened up 5 minutes later and then crashed, got halted on the way down. And when it reopened up, look what held as support. It wasn't the 185. It was actually that two level that we had said, like, let's not forget to give respect to that price. This became a good bottom. And listen, you could take this trade and then set your stop right below this candle. And if it breaks below there, then maybe you could scoop it up off the next one. I do that. I'll do that at times. So this definitely was possible to jump in off this 2 level. Good slingshot, though, obviously, after. Now, in accordance to the cyber clock, for as much as this moved up, you would at least want to see either A, resistance here become support, or B, otherwise. And this is what made this like really tough. Not every trade does this, folks, what I'm about to show you, but the stock kept getting halted over and over and over. I mean, up and down. If you remember the ASST trade from last week, that crazy thing, it kind of reminded us of that. So for as much as it moved up, you have to be worried about what happens when it gets halted going down. Not every stock will reverse at 10:30 on the mark. This got pretty close, but the issue with it was that with as many halts as this had, when this gets halted on the way down again, A, it's much less likely it even goes back up to start. This was actually the 5%, the 1% move there, where it makes that unexpected bounce coming off a downward halt. This is the trouble. This is where you don't want to be stuck in this type of stuff here because it's much tougher to get out of. I mean, first, just look at this one gap. It gets halted here and then reopens up about 10 minutes later, not even 5 minutes later, but right here at 225. It's about a 15-cent gap down. So you have minimal chance to get out at your price, let alone even at all. Now, again, that's where we just basically move on to another stock. We're done with this thing. Whatever news came out on this stock, hey, we'll try and trade it when it starts moving back up again for us. When it's on the gainers list more, maybe tomorrow, Wednesday. If it wants to prove itself to us, then let it. But otherwise, there's thousands upon thousands of other stocks out there in the market for us to try and grab. So I have no problem moving on in situations like that. Because again, it's not even a day trading market anymore. Fausto is bringing this up in the morning meeting. This is now, and it has been for a long time. We've been saying this for the last couple of weeks at least. And Fausto has been steering the ship more than anyone. This is certainly now more of a swing market to buy and hold and look for better moves over a week or two or few. So with that, I was telling Fausto about this from like a couple of weeks ago because he's been leading the show on Archer, ACHR. Like he nailed it on Archer last year. And it popped up in his head again. He was talking about it a few weeks ago. And I remember because I said to him immediately, I said, all right, well, I want to get back in, or I want to get in on this thing. Maybe I tried it once and I took a tiny loss like after it first ran up. I got in late, if anything, but Fausto was crushing it on this trade back from the end of last year, and he was starting to talk about it again. So I was sitting there thinking to him, like, I got to find my way into this trade. I like it. It's just, A, if he's talking good about it, likely it's going to work out. That's my guess. But B, it has really good orders out there on the book. It's 100% tradable, right? So this could be a good swing trade over time. But the key with any swing trade, much like a day trade, it's the two most powerful words in the market, if and then. So if this stock decides to hold support, then there's a chance for it to try and break out and make a better move. So I don't mind being there right place, wrong time, but it has to be worth it for my entry. So I even remember this because a couple of weeks ago, this is an old note from the end of April. Archer swing $8.77. That's what I was looking for like a couple weeks ago, a few weeks ago. And I had it on this piece of paper. So even from the end of last week, Fausto was hyping up their earnings. I was like, oh, okay, that's right. The Archer. I wrote that down. That's right. And then finally this morning, not at 877. I'm in at 896, 897, my swing entry on it right now. But they have earnings after the close today. So I am now tailing Fausto on this trade. It's his trade right now, but I'm in it with him now at this point. So we're looking for a strong move on Archer heading into the close today. I'm also long on Wolf. I jumped in that as a swing trade, as well as I've been in on SoFi from the beginning of last week. We've been talking about that. That's been working out really well. But this is where I talk about though, hey, there's other stocks out there for you to focus on. When that, stock, what was it? The not even the FRGT, grip, GRY. When this thing starts getting halted on the way down, just wipe your hands clean, move on to greener pastures because, hey, the closer it does get to 1030, perhaps you could find a bounce. The closer it gets to 1030, perhaps maybe Archer will look to reverse, right? Right at 1030. So kind of easy to show that after the fact. But simply put, the more that you're watching a stock not make the move that you're looking for it to make, the more that you're just kind of on the sidelines watching this just go the opposite direction, then think about all of the missed opportunity that you could be tackling otherwise, right? That makes me go crazy as a trader. If that doesn't make you go crazy, then, you know, we got to think about the opportunity a lot more because uh, time's our most valuable asset in this market, let alone life. But in this market, so the more we're watching this just do nothing for, minutes on hours on end, think about everything else that could be flying and making a big move. Jeff's Palantir trade, maybe, or maybe the Tesla making a bounce over time. Who knows? That's just where you got to move on. All right. Now, I want to get to an email that was sent in from our student, Roberto. And I'll basically pop this up on my other monitor here. I'll read Roberto's email out. And he intended on this being for Traders Talk. So I want to thank him for sending this in. He says, I'm sending my file with my questions for Monday's Traders Talk. I hope that you could answer them and then work on the rest of the current students and the future ones watching on YouTube. So this was intended for this workshop. Thank you, Roberto. Now, let's go over these trades. At least I'll recite them. I'll go over his journal, his thoughts basically, and just review. So you'd sent this on Saturday, right? So this was from Friday, the end of last week, probably Thursday included as well, maybe. Let's go back a little bit. So Hims trade is one of the memorable ones. We should learn from it. You saw previous old support in February, but what is not clear is how you define them around $41.30 to use for this fabulous swing move on the 5th. Yeah, we nailed it on the Hims trade. So, to go over that a bit more, absolutely. What you look for in a swing move first is just to see long-term levels look to hold. So with the Hims, at least, I think 35 was a pretty good price to look at least before the earnings did come out. It had a big gap up here. It ended up beginning to spike up afterwards. Let me just show it. I think it was more from the... Let me see. No, that wasn't it. This was it. It was from 38.90. That was it, Roberto. I get my price right there. It was on this candle on the 6th. So my entry was basically off of 38.90, 39 bucks. Moment. Okay. So here's what I was looking for on this. If I had to take some time to go back myself, a little critical thinking in the moment, Roberto. So yeah, lots happened since that entry, but even from before that, I wanted to get my story straight for you. So when you look at a swing move, you could look at resistance flipping into support, or you could look to see the wicks, where you see the wicks of a lot of these candles when it was running up. What were the lows on those candles, like the wicks? Because what happened over time here, it broke out, it popped, but before it broke out here again, it pulled back and then moved up. And then 2 candles later, it pulled back, made another higher low. So I was using this area here as potential support. This area together based off of these lows. I'm thinking that if Hims wants to try and make another run or similar type of move that it made back from February of this year, even if we don't get as high as we did, if we could just get support to build and get the higher lows kicking in again, I'd feel great about that. And you could even go a little higher and kind of say with this doji candle, this one low is cutting into it a little bit here afterwards. But I was using more around 39, 39.50-ish area here. So once it kind of pulled into it that morning on the 6th, it's easy to say it worked out, right? So in hindsight, we know what happened, but what happens if it doesn't make that proverbial big move shortly after, right? What happens if it doesn't make that proverbial big move shortly after. And I think I got in on the Hims trade. I think you're right. It was the 5th. It was the day before. It was when it ended up beginning to build back up here, I think. One of the two. That was it. I was averaging down here at the time. This was my two entries. It was pretty much shortly after the open. There we go. I took one small loss at first, and then I was building back into the trade later on. I had one more entry, though. I thought I had a price. Let me see. Hmm. Maybe it was from even the day before that, but I definitely built this position from this day where it was wicking down. But the key though is that it still needs to build higher lows. So for it to move up as much as it did, it was a nice move. Let's see. Maybe it was the day after Roberto. Sometimes my trade manager will start wonking out, doesn't give me what I want. Had the entry right off of 38.90. So it had to have been from that day then, the day before they came out with the earnings. So the thing is with Hims, right? Why was I confident on Hims? Because it's easy to say it popped afterwards. Hey, what if it made an underwhelming pop, came back down, and then eventually started making a move the other way? You have to learn to just accept and let go and just say, all right, it's not working out. That's basically what happened at first on my Celsius swing trade I had from like the beginning of this calendar year. I took a loss on it at first before I got back in and it made the move I wanted. All worked out. But it's not always going to be as flawless and as perfect as the Hims trade was from the earnings. So, a lot of people were talking online about Hims. You don't always want to buy everything that you hear is good, but I saw so much good news about Hims. The partnerships that they have, Novo, I believe, and they have more on the horizon. So I was a believer of the product, the company. Not only that, though, most importantly, they were making a pretty good move from the end of last year. I know they dropped off a lot, so I wouldn't have said it would be a good swing trade when it's just crashing down, unless if it does hold support pretty nicely here. That would have been an entry. But once it starts to push back up, that's where I become more interested in it. And then from there, I have to identify where my levels are. So I was basing it off of just the previous run that it had and the wicks. So right around that area, 38, 39-ish, right around there, those two lines, that's how I was able to define that area. All right, so I'm gonna keep going through Roberto's email here. So I think this next one is on ASST. This is from Friday last week, so a little bit easier to go over here. Looks like it's trying to go up a little bit now. Not fully jumpy towards it right away, but from Friday last week. All right, right at pretty much 12 o'clock. Yeah, I see this one now. Okay, got caught up here, it looks like. So jumped in right around $8.50 roughly. Thought at the time it was a good entry and had set the stop at $8.10. Got stopped out quickly on a big loss. How do I avoid that? So this is where I could at least show a little snapshot from Roberto's email because he sent in a bookmap screenshot too, so it makes it even easier. So this is what happened, Roberto. I mean, it ended up crashing into resistance here at 850. Looks like that was good resistance at the time. So once it breaks resistance and then runs after, nice pop, that is where you would want to try and see resistance initially become support, initially, the first time. So if you heard me even on, what was it, the pony trade that we reviewed just before, I was surprised it held support two times. The first time is your best shot. Now, let's say if you take the trade as it goes under, then back over 850, happens right there. If that's your entry, then much like we would have wanted on the FRGT trade, it's got to make higher highs. It's got to at least continue with higher lows, higher highs, and go up to the next resistance. But if it's not going to do that, you have to think again, how much has the stock already moved up over the last however many days, right? From a few days ago, it's 59 cents. So you figure at some point this thing's got to come screaming down. We don't know when, right? Sometimes it's right away on the same candle of the same day. Sometimes it runs up a couple days in a row, then crashes. I'd rather not try and gamble on that, right? So if you take an entry, it's good to take an entry, but that's where you do want to set a tighter stop, though. So when you jump in over 850 here, it looks like pretty clean because it was also holding under it pretty nicely in the pre-market hours. It's a nice level. This is a big level, Roberto. So hey, it breaks over it. It runs up nice at first. This could have been a sweet spot, but if it's not going to continue to push higher, this is basically what happened on the FRGT trade from earlier today, right? As much as I was clamoring for 175, 180 to try and hold, it did the first time. Once it fails to break higher highs and flip that again, then it's game over. So for that ASST, pretty similar, I'd say. Pretty similar. But that is where I mentioned to our students that wrote me just earlier that catchphrase I'd said. When a stock breaks through a big level and I jump in, we should be expecting a big move shortly after. So I wouldn't want to try and set a large, wide stop if I'm expecting it's either going big move up or big move down. I could set my stop below the lows of like one of these candles, maybe. And if it's not playing nice, then, hey, this is more prone to happen. So that's where it's okay to take like a break even or a small loss if need be. Hey, it looked like a good entry level. So I want you to feel confident with knowing you looked at a good price. Not even from this chart, but it very evidently showed on Bookmap the picture that you sent me. Like that clearly is an orange line staying out there for a little while. So, just I would want to see it flip into support and play nicer. If it doesn't, then we just got to give up. That's pretty much it. All right, last one from Roberto. Then we're going to actually finish up just in a little bit from there. I do want to get a little Bitcoin discussion in before we finish. So maybe we'll go a little bit after 1 o'clock Eastern if you're joining us on social media. But just 1 second here. There we go. Good. All right, so let's go to this last one from Roberto. So this has to do with the volume bars, I believe, the open and close. I think this is on the ASST trade, Roberto, or is this on Lyft? I think this. Oh, it's on Lyft. Okay, Lyft. All right, so Roberto asking about the open and close volume bars right here. It shows on my TradeStation platform. We could use this for Lyft maybe coming up, Roberto, but yeah, you could see at the open, big spike. At the close, even larger spike. It's what we call the open and closing bell prints. I teach this in the phase 2 course just pretty thoroughly. It's more towards the later part of the class, but that's just where at the market open and at the market close, you're going to see a big transaction pop up on Bookmap. It'll show a big dot. And then on your time and sales, it will show just big transaction, hundreds of thousands of shares more often than not, if not millions. So let me see if I could just go through like the old like time and sales here. Go through that big spike of volume, at least on this stock Lyft from the end of Friday. All right. So this big spike of volume on Lyft from Friday afternoon, you would see a big dot or ball on Bookmap. That's what we call the closing print. And when you put your cursor over that, dot or ball on Bookmap, it will show you the true size. Like for instance, this is 2.1 million shares that got filled right at 4 p.m. at the price 1665. Now, that is just, a very short answer here. That's not one person. That's a group of traders that are having their orders filled at that price. What does it mean? Well, simply, it means it's a new level going into the next trading day. So it looks like it sliced below there pretty early in the morning, Roberto, and dropped. So this is how I treat it. Let me just ask, as well as Roberto, Debbie, Michael, Lynn, and Randy, Fred, Sam, Scott, Margaret, Wayne, all of our students joining us inside our live trading room. When a stock breaks below big support and tanks, it drops fast. What are we expecting that big support to flip into? Resistance. And it did at first. It didn't like exactly touch it. It got like a couple pennies shy, and then it rejected, came back down a bit. All right, well, it came up to it again and it tried to break it. It broke over it. It moved up nicely from it here at first. So maybe since it broke over this as a working resistance and it moved up respectably from it, right? Then perhaps that resistance could flip into a support later on today. It's possible. If the market's just suddenly dropping and tank fast, then this might not look to hold it as nice. But in my view, if this stock is still making higher lows here and continuing from Friday, then why not try and have this now, since it broke over it here as resistance and ran, for this to now try and be support, right? It was resistance at first. Now, since it broke over it, to try and see the flipping of that into support. All right, real quick, we're going to do Bitcoin and then we're going to jump off, but just I'll get this out the way now. If you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, TikTok as well. We don't do TikTok dances here, but if you wanted to subscribe, go right down to the bottom below, hit the follow or subscribe button there at Cyber Trading U. That's our YouTube handle, namely. So if you have any questions, we're always on there streaming each and every day of the week. Thursdays and Fridays, we do full audio commentary in the morning, myself and the man himself, Fausto. And hey, every Monday here we're on doing a live workshop. All right, Bitcoin. Let me ask, who here is in either Bitcoin or IBIT? Who here is in literally anything Bitcoin related? If you were in literally anything Bitcoin related, if not Bitcoin itself, give me a chat back. Be a mining stock. I know Dave and he loves that CLSK trade. One of our students here. Bunch of us, right? So Wendy, Anastasia, Glenn, Michael, Kerry, Farzad, John, Lawrence, Margaret, Lee, bunch of us. It doesn't need to be actual Bitcoin itself. That's fine. That's fine. I mean, right now, this swing I just entered today, Wolf, I kind of chased it a little bit. I wanted 340. I didn't know if it was going to pull back. I took a stab on it at 350. This is a Bitcoin mining stock. So, hey, that counts, right? Now, let's at least show regular Bitcoin, though, here before we finish. So, obviously, pretty nice move over the last week, let alone the weekend, where it actually broke up to 105,000. What I want to show here is very similar to Bookmap and how you could see the CVP, the volume bar histogram there. Give me a brief moment if I can. There we go. So there was a bunch of volume building up here from the last, several months, up and down, back from October into November into today, right around this area, 96,000, 97,000 roughly. So we broke over that and we decided to try and make a run towards the next somewhat larger, volume area. And that was seemingly off of like 105 right here. There was a lot of volume built up back from December into the beginning of January, right where my cursor is. See that like histogram, little spike there, right? So I drew a line right at that price, 105,000. And more or less what happened was, get rid of these volume bars now, make it easier. It held it from Saturday, held it into Sunday night. Then this morning, early in the morning, it blasted above it. I was feeling really nice at first. I was like, wow, is this really going to actually get the job done that quickly? Is this really going to, hold this now into support? Nah, it was a rejection. And I think this is exactly when the news came out with the U.S.-China joint statement. So perhaps part of it was priced in where they squeezed it up going into the weekend really well. And once that joint statement was announced, big pop, and it broke over it. So there is buying pressure here off this 105K now, but it rejected afterwards. It didn't get the rightful job done to flip it into a support, pulled back. That's fun. I mean, it's a long game here that we're playing. So basically, what we're seeing now is just continuation of higher lows. This is just a little tiny chart level. That's all. Just higher lows building. That's all. We're still showing higher lows, even with this, little dip back down here a bit. All is well. And even if we break this, then we're probably going to drop into the next like little area here. These springs probably around 100,000. Unless if bad news comes out, I don't think that we're going to dip as low as 96 again. I think that we're done with that. unless if bad news comes out of thin air. I'm always allowing that into my train of thought. There's always room for uncertain, unlikely events to happen. But yeah, if something crazy comes out, like Ukraine, Russia, something nuts, like yeah, I'm sure that you see the markets plunge, including Bitcoin. You could see it drop back down to this. I'm going to wish into existence that nothing bad happens coming up in the very near future, nothing unexpected. And if that's the case, then I don't think that we're going to drop too far from this point. So that's where I'll tell you, hey, my mining stock right now, Wolf, is trying to go back up. I'll be happy with this entry if we can get a good market close on this. The mining stocks we'll just get to first because those have not been good. The Bitcoin mining stocks are not good opportunities for swing trades compared to Bitcoin, compared to IBIT. If you're doing IBIT long term, you're going to do better compared to the mining stocks. This right here is an ETF for all of the Bitcoin mining stocks. WGMI, it stands for We Are Going to Make It. It's a abbreviation there, acronym. So, WGMI, it's the Bitcoin mining ETF. Well, this clearly has not been as strong compared to IBIT, right? And we've been, hammering that the whole time, telling you. So, hey, the last few days, the end of last week into today, so it looks like some of the mining stocks were doing good. Mara finally starting to wake up a little bit there. CLSK maybe that had a good Friday, but those are good day trades. Focus on them as day trades. They're all tradable. So if you see them up big in pre-market, then absolutely focus on them as day trades. But if you are trying to dip your feet into Bitcoin, if you haven't already, then I would strongly recommend to stick with just IBIT. This is like 100% correlation to regular spot Bitcoin price. It's the BlackRock Bitcoin ETF. So, for as much Bitcoin as the ETF accrues and buys altogether, it draws more and more correlation. The last thing I'll show with Bitcoin before we finish up, because we're already running a few minutes over, is regret doing this here in just a bit. There we go. Our M2 money supply, right? We showed this a month and a half ago. We've been on top of this since the bottom here, calling out to you, hey, I believe that as long as this follows suit, we could see a strong run from May into June. So I've been very bullish since that time. I have been holding on to a Bitcoin leveraged position on Coinbase platform since the end of April. Doing pretty good with it. Now, though, I think that we're going to continue to move up in due time, right? We might have a couple pullbacks in accordance to this metric here, the M2 Global, but I'll tell you, there's been such strong correlations with this year that I feel confident that we'll break all-time highs within the next month or so, get up to 125,000 maybe. That was my original target back in January. It was from February. I was saying by March, end of February, 120,000 or so. That was before the tariff stuff started going off. So that obviously, threw a wrench in those plans. But those plans are right back on track now. So, I don't know if I want to give as much of a timeline. Anything could happen, but I'm definitely thinking 125,000, my original target here at this point. All right, folks. So we're going to finish up, at least for the time being. Bill says Hut was a mover today. Yeah, it's going back up nice too. So listen, like these mining stocks could be good day trades for the afternoon. Just make sure they're on good trends though first. Like the Wolf here, I think is really nice. Might even be a little too slow as a day trade. It's a better swing trade given how slow it is. So that Hut though could be pretty good. Yeah, I like that Hut trade. And that's moving with the GRYP stock. So I'm not jumpy to this one right now, at least yet, because clearly this is not as close to the highs as Hut right now is to its highs. So let's focus on this for right now, maybe a couple more as we wrap this workshop up. So for Bill, Debbie, Clarence, Roberto, Scott, Farzad, all of us just go here quickly. Last one. George, the ball went in the hoop before the sound went off, before the buzzer went off. It's a buzzer beater. I'll answer this one here lastly, then we'll finish up. George asking here inside our live trading room, one of our gold students, can you show us again how you added that indicator? Yeah, let's do that. Do that quick. Do that quick. So it's on TradingView, tradingview.com. It's nowhere else. So that's the first thing. not on your platform, not on TradeStation, none of that. It's on tradingview.com. So if you are familiar with TradingView, then just go to indicators here. Now, you just type in the actual full name, M or global space M2 space money space supply. And there's like a bunch that pop up, right? There's a bunch. They may have retitled it from when I added it to the indicator to my chart. This is, I think, the one. I guess they put their name on it, like this person, Finfluential, whatever. But global M2 money supply. This is the one that you want. Days offset. Notice it says that there. That's what mine says. All right. If you have any other questions, though, on that, George, just private chat me, private chat message me. I'm going to type my email here as well. But if you know how to private chat message me, click the 3 dots to the right side of my little thumbnail inside the live trading room. Gives you an option to send me a private instant chat message to me just here on the side. If you have any follow-ups on that, though, George. All right. That goes for all of us inside our live trading room. Once again, Bill, Debbie, Clarence, Scott, Farzad, Kerry, Michael, Glenn, all of us just here live. Let me know if you have any follow-up questions. But if you're on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, the works, again, just join us, not just on YouTube, but inside our live trading room. We're live each and every morning. We're live each and every afternoon, do full hour-long audio commentary during the good times of the day. So if you wanted to join us, go right down to the scrolling link on the banner below, ctu.co/trial. Sign up for a week-long trial to our live trading room. Look forward to seeing you there. But for all of our students here, just we'll dip into silence for a moment. Just right now, things are normally a bit slow heading into lunchtime. So good time for you to whip something up pretty quick. Nice little lunch for you to eat quick. And then we'll be back later on today at 2:30 Eastern for the next broadcast. Talk to you then.